Good morning. Appreciate the time this morning. In terms of the agenda today, I'm going to talk through four things with you this morning. First, I'm going to give you a day in the life of one of our customers, just an example of how they've been able to use AWS and CloudFront. Then I'm going to talk through some of the principles that we use in thinking about the innovation that we add to our platform, really customer-driven, and you'll hear about that as well. I'm going to talk through an exciting announcement, as Dan mentioned, and then take some questions at the end. So that's what we'll do with our time this morning before I turn things over. So, many of our customers start off with a very simple idea. In this case, it's TwitPic. They had a very, very simple idea. They wanted to share photos on the internet. And this was a side project, essentially. So a single developer started this project in 2008 with an extra server. And that person ran TwitPic for 18 months. And during that time, they were getting over 500,000 visitors per month to their offering. Today, they have 8 employees and 100 times the volume. So in terms of basically 50 million unique visitors a month are using their site. So what comes with that kind of growth? And one of the reasons we talk about the emerging startups are just the level of growth that they go through very quickly. So while they started with that very simple vision, it was very soon into that process they realized, wait a second, we're spending less time on this particular vision and more times on what we call undifferentiated heavy lifting. So the problems that they faced were storage, right? You're storing all these photographs, huge volumes of photographs. Compute, right? What started as a single extra server off to the side could never meet the needs of that particular the demands of that user base. The overall hardware associated with maintaining, getting that connected to the internet, having the software deployed, and then doing all the content delivery, all the data transfer. And so enter AWS, right? The reason they like taking advantage of AWS and what we bring in general are this notion of no upfront capital expenses. So we're really about turning what's traditionally been capital expenses into operating expenses. So you get to do that, and they get to do that with the low cost associated that we're able to buy on their behalf. So we're essentially buying in bulk as Amazon, making that service available on AWS. We're offering it as a pay-as-you-go model, so they're able to pay just what they take advantage of. Along the way, they get to use the self-service infrastructure, so it's not about having to rack and stack the servers as much as they could do it. It's not about having to keep the software up to date. They have that one-touch deploy where they can reuse the same templates over and over again and expand it across our various data centers around the world, whether those be multiple availability zones, multiple regions, and then take advantage of our full footprint. And that really gives them the ability to easily scale up and down, right? Particularly whether you're an enterprise customer or a startup, you don't necessarily know, right, on a particular project or campaign how that thing's going to succeed. So that ability to scale up when the demand is there and scale down when it's not, people find fairly very useful. And then really that focus lets them focus on agility and their own unique value proposition in terms of time to market as well. So those are the overall approach. And so I thought I'd let you see it in their own words. I'm not going to read the quote to you, but really I wanted to kind of summarize a couple of key points here. So first, by taking advantage of this move into the cloud, they were able to really focus on their core business. And in doing that, their business grew 100 times, over 100 times in just a couple of years. And part of that now is they're serving over 2 billion objects in Amazon S3. So that's another kind of idea for you to the amount of scale they're able to do. And they estimate, again in their own words, that they're saving about $70,000 a month by moving to CloudFront over doing it themselves or using another approach. And again, really it's all about the scale. So they're able to focus on the user experience and get all the benefits of having us manage that infrastructure for them. So how do we think about this generally? That's a great example, but we're a very customer-driven company. I'm glad to say that we've been able to iterate quickly in this space, but as we think about it, it really is around these 4 dimensions that we think about how to react to customer requests for new functionality. One is around ease of use, and when we announced CloudFront here 3.5 years ago, or actually at the Streaming Media West 3.5 years ago, we really talked about ease of use, how it shouldn't be difficult to build on top of a CDN, and I'll talk about that. Second, performance. That's just part of our DNA. As one of the leading websites, we're very, very focused on performance, and as a CDN, we're obviously focused on performance, and I'll talk about that today as well. And then the overall integration. So one of the things I just mentioned a moment ago was integration with S3, but there's broader integration. And I think the full range of the solutions that we're able to provide really come into force when we combine those things. And then finally, obviously, we're about being cost effective. So we'll talk about that in a second as well. So on the ease of use dimensions, not a super interesting slide, although this is our console. So I'm glad to say CloudFront had one of the first consoles for AWS, and across all the services, it's kind of this long list of services along the top there. But the whole point across all those things is we provide for this self-service sign-up, 24/7 by 365. Dan talked about anybody can call him in the middle of the night. Anybody can sign up for CloudFront in the middle of the night. Anybody can start using CloudFront on a Sunday night at 2 o'clock in the morning. You don't have to talk to a sales rep. You don't have to sign a contract. You don't have to have a long-term commitment. And that was one of the key things we added to the space. Along the way, we've been extending the console, and we launched a new version of it again last night, as well as having full programmatic access. Everything you can do in the console, everything you can do from CloudFront, you can do through our APIs. So if you have specific workflows, you can call those APIs. If you are building applications, you can call those APIs. You don't need to talk to a human being. You don't have to pick up a phone. You don't have to send an email. You can do it on your own whenever you like. So performance. Again, performance is something that we've been super focused on at Amazon for over 15 years across the company. And so one of our customers is Amazon.com, the retailer. And just like any other customer, we had to win them. And by win them, I mean Amazon.com cares tremendously about performance. So, we started serving Amazon.com traffic several years ago. And this is a representation of the graph. This is HTTP delivery traffic, worldwide traffic. And it compares CloudFront with 2 other incumbent CDNs who've been serving some of that traffic for a while as well. Amazon's always been a multi-vendor company. We have that approach in everything we do. And so this shows, for the last 30 days, aggregate performance, HTTP delivery, CloudFront versus the other CDNs who are serving that traffic. So in one case, we're about 7% faster. In another case, we're 51% faster. So this is something we are absolutely focused on. We test it internally. We test it externally. We look at it every day. We're driving to get better and better performance. And part of the announcement that we're making today has a lot to do with performance. So let's talk a little bit about integration. Again, when we think about how we add capabilities into any of our particular web services, we think about the pieces, right? The better together aspects of how you can use the sum total of our web offerings together. You don't have to. Right? You can pick and choose. So I talked about TwitPic earlier and their ability to use S3 for static delivery. And, we think S3 makes a great origin server. Love it as an origin. You can also take advantage of our Elastic Compute Cloud, EC2. So in this diagram, I have EC2 with or without the Elastic Load Balancer. So again, if you wanted to use EC2 in a single availability zone or single region, one of our existing data centers, you can do that in just one place. If you wanted to scale it across multiple regions, you can put it behind Elastic Load Balancers, and you can combine it with Route 53 to let you do what we announced a little while ago around latency-based routing, so to shard out your application around the world and start routing portions of that traffic to each of those EC2 regions. And you can obviously front that with CloudFront, and you have a choice there, right? You can pick and choose what you like. You can also use Route 53 to do the same A/B testing that we've done on our retail site that's well known. So you can start with a very small percentage of traffic to one region or one particular instance of your application, and then scale that out as you feel more comfortable and you want to get more load and get more feedback about that. So again, that's kind of a sense of how we can integrate them. So cost effective, I think Dan mentioned a little bit about this before, but we have very much of a pay-as-you-go approach to pricing. So we have pay-as-you-go pricing both in terms of tiered pricing. So as you use more, as you consume more, your rates go down, as well as this notion of traditional approach of reserved capacity. So for people who know, right, I talked about the new application, the new startup that says, hey, or in this case, a startup that's been around for several years, who's growing and growing and doesn't really know what the ceiling looks like. So that tiered approach makes sense for some people. For other cases, this notion of, hey, I know a certain baseline. I know I'm going to have a certain baseline of use, and given that baseline of use, I can reserve that much capacity and take advantage of both, right, and apply them across. So that's kind of our approach to that. So, I talked about a single customer. We've been growing actually pretty quickly. As I mentioned, we announced CloudFront at Streaming Media West in the fall of 2008. So each fall we've been kind of updating folks, or actually this last fall we updated folks on how many customers we have. At the time we said we had over 20,000 paying CloudFront customers. We chose October just because of when the initial announcement was. And at the time, basically we said, look, we're more than doubling each of the last 3 years. We're continuing on that trajectory, and in many cases believe that we're well positioned to help make CDN accessible to people who previously either couldn't afford it, found it too complicated, either from a contractual point of view or from a programming and connectivity point of view, and have really democratized the space. So in terms of customers, I picked, again, just one earlier, but we have over 60 case studies specifically around CloudFront. They range from enterprises like public broadcasting, PBS, IMDb, Sega, Electronic Arts, Amazon, various startups. I picked out TwitPic because of their particular solution, but Encoding.com, Urban Spoon, and many others. And I welcome you to take a look at our webpage, awsamazon.com, and click on the case studies, and you can take a look and see how customers are using CloudFront. So let's talk about this announcement that we made this morning. For a long time we had customers saying, great, CloudFront, like you've got static delivery, you're doing streaming, you're doing live, but what about dynamic? And for those of you who are less familiar with the space, dynamic really comes down to a variety of different use cases. I think of them as use cases like personalized news, weather, sports, social media, advertising, just to name a few. And so those are all customized. And so what we announced this morning is that we are now supporting dynamic content with CloudFront. But we're taking very much the same approach that I just walked you through, our thought process around how we add innovation. And we're doing it kind of in a number of dimensions. So first, we're doing a number of TCP and persistent connection optimizations to lower the latency. So when your user comes to CloudFront, they get a quick connection back to, the user gets a quick connection to a local, one of our 30 and growing edge locations. And those can talk to any number of origins. So in this case, again, I've shown that same similar diagram of an EC2 instance running behind, or EC2 instances running behind an elastic load balancer. That could be in, again, one availability zone, multiple availability zones, multiple regions. And we're letting you create a single, what we call CloudFront distribution for both dynamic and static content. So we're taking a very different approach here that I'll walk through in a bit. And the separation here is we take care of that. So you no longer have to do custom programming. You no longer have to think ahead, like this part of my site's dynamic and this part of my site is static. I have to change that page, right? We'll maintain the persistent connections back to the origins. We'll monitor closely the network paths in the Amazon data centers in a way that no one else can. And we'll provide better connectivity back to those and higher performance. So with that, again, I kind of talked through that we're taking the same approach we've always taken in the past. So one around simple, right? Our approach here is it should be do-it-yourself. You shouldn't have to call and hire an expensive consultant. You shouldn't have to learn some proprietary language. You shouldn't have to rebuild your website, right? It should just work. And that integration that we talked about, you should be able to use the best that we can provide in terms of static and dynamic delivery options, or your own, right? And so we're letting you pick and choose, right? You can use, again, in my diagrams, I tend to walk through Amazon examples, but you don't have to. So you have the choice there. And then on the cost-effective side, again, it's on our existing rates. So what you pay for is the request and transfer fees that we have today, or had yesterday. And there's no platform fee. There's no monthly rate. There's no extra upcharge for dynamic rate. This is the same thing we did with streaming, same thing we did with live, right? We take an approach of things that were complicated. We want to make them accessible to everyone. So what are customers saying about this? So here's a particular customer who, longtime customer who's been focused on dynamic delivery. And they care a lot about performance, obviously ease of use. They talked about their ability to do this in just minutes. They talked about the cost savings, obviously. They think are pretty significant relative to what else is out there. And so I wanted to kind of move quickly. That's in the press release this morning, so you can read it later. I want to move quickly to take some questions since I know Dan wants to keep us on time. So really, again, I just want to kind of leave you with a couple of key thoughts here. One is it's about making this all accessible to anyone. We want to provide access to not just the hundreds of thousands of customers who already run their websites on AWS in 190 countries, but we want to make it available to everyone. And so it's really around taking what has historically been these capital expenses, turning them into operating expenses, and really bringing down the complexity that's necessary to deliver both dynamic content, just the same way we've done with streaming and live and HTTP delivery in the past. So with that, I'll turn it over to any questions. Yes?
Is CloudFront being supported in all the AWS geographies where you guys have a physical presence today?
So CloudFront is in 30 places around the world today. AWS is, I believe, in 9. I always lose track of the AWS. I think it's 9. So yes, CloudFront is both near or around all those AWS data centers. We don't really talk about the specifics around those data centers, though. Other questions? Yes, sir.
I'll ask another question. If you could go back to the performance slide, I'd like to understand why do you think that slide? Why do you think CloudFront performed better than CDNA and CDNB? What's the secret sauce there?
So the gentleman's question was around the performance slide, why we think Amazon CloudFront performed better than those other CDNs. I think part of it is we're very focused on performance. And in building out CloudFront, when we choose those edge locations, we choose them very strategically. So we choose them based on performance, and we choose them based on price. Like, we don't take the traditional approach of saying you have to be everywhere to get good performance. You have to be in the right places. You have to be in the most cost-effective places. And in doing that, you can get great performance, and you can drive down price for customers. And so that's the approach that we've taken around picking where those locations are. But the rest of it is really around just block and tackling operations, like focusing on performance, looking at the data, measuring the data, figuring out where you're slow, going after it. And it's a rinse, lather, repeat kind of cycle, right? You keep focusing on where performance could be better, and you get better, right? And that's just in our DNA. That's just how we work. And I guess the last thing I'd close there is it's around customer experience. So this isn't about gaming it. This isn't about, my customers aren't in data centers. Your customers aren't in data centers. I'm sitting in front of a computer, right? I'm sitting in front of a mobile device wherever I put my phone. So we measure to the glass. So the other area is because we're very much focused to end user performance. The retail website is focused on on end user performance for years. They've been tracking. Sure, they use third-party tests, and we use third-party tests everywhere. But part of it is saying, what's the actual user going to experience, and making sure that customer has a fantastic experience. Sure. Other questions? Sir?
Would your end user traffic be divided how among those three providers?
Sure. The gentleman's question has to do with how our traffic is divided. So CloudFront takes the vast majority of the traffic, super majority. I don't know how to answer that question without giving you. We've taken a significant portion of that traffic. The one has almost none, and the other has been losing more and more of it, and the other has also just been declining in terms of its share. Dan's signaling me for one last question. So the gentleman in the back.
Are you putting these 30 edges into other operating networks, or are you just peering networks through your own infrastructure?
I'm sorry, I couldn't quite hear the question. It had to do with.
Are you putting these 30 edges in other operator networks, or are you just putting them paired with those operator networks?
So today we're picking, today we've picked carrier-neutral facilities where you can peer well and be near a number of providers. We haven't chosen to put locations inside of a particular carrier. Doesn't mean we can't. That's just been our approach thus far. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. I'll be available afterwards if you have questions, and I'll turn things over to our next speaker.